Hey y'all, we are live again on Tuesday night with the tea. I'm so excited as always because I have a good friend and a person. I know y'all are probably like, why is the chair still there? But it's from when Devon was here last week. But anyway, um have a good friend on tonight who's going to be talking to us about finances, so money matters and mental health. That's always something that is relevant, right? So if housekeeping, I forget all the time. I am streaming live from StreamYard. I use it to broadcast multiple platforms. So if you are on my profile page, my page, it's not open to the public typically. So if you are on that page, please allow StreamYard to access your name on Facebook so that I can see who you are and see who is commenting. And if you want to have comments be shown, especially if you want to ask some questions, because we're gonna have time for questions, y'all. And it won't be long, I promise. But hey Charina. So um, without further ado, I am going to bring on our very special guest, Rosemary Spangler. Oh, hey, Rosie.
Hello. Hi.
Hey. So
Hello.
let me introduce you real quick. I'm gonna pull up my handy dandy notes. Like I sound like the little Blues Clues guy. My dandy notebook.
Your
Um,
handy dandy notebook.
right. So Rosemary is the director of counseling at the Family Center. She's also a certified financial education instructor and and a HUD certified housing counselor. So, y'all, we got a real expert up in here today. Not that anybody that comes on is not expert, but I'm just saying. So we got a real expert here that can talk to us about money matters and mental health. So, or do you want to add anything to what I just said? Because I know.
No, you did great. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm like really like this is cool because y'all, I used to work at the Family Center as a counselor. And back when I worked there, it was very separated as far as like there was financial counseling and then there was the family mental health counseling, right? And so, different structures happen, different things, within the organization. I wasn't there exactly when this happened, but we worked closely together from counseling and finance, because because I think you do have a degree in psychology as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that we always had, I remember always having to use you guys for the financial counseling piece to help when people weren't able to afford to pay for like their mental health services, right? Or to get like the
Mhm.
reduction in fees. So what happened, or I mean, you don't have to say like what happened, but how did you become like to do both? Like what, over the whole department, like for it to combine, because it's combined now, right?
It is. And so actually that's one of the things that came out of the pandemic was unfortunately like many businesses, especially nonprofits, we did suffer some loss of funding and, had to look at different ways to restructure the budget. So to me, it just made sense. So it was one of the things that I suggested, when we started talking about ways that we could, they were looking at areas to cut or areas to condense. And so just combining those services to me made a lot of sense. And then I was offered the position. And so I was extremely flattered, a little bit surprised that they listened to me, but from a standpoint, like you were saying, we did work closely together. And I saw, and I think it was a surprise to me, being kind of new as far as the mental health counseling, that there was such a correlation with people who needed our services, people who utilized mental health counseling, and vice versa. So it just made a lot of sense to kind of combine those departments. And I felt like that was a strength that we could offer as a mental health counseling agency, but having a financial expert or two on staff that could help people with those financial issues. And so with the population that we serve, seeing people come in from all different walks of life that
Mhm.
they're going through emotional challenges, they're going through some mental health hardships, but maybe the reason is because they've had housing instability, or maybe they're looking at bankruptcy, or maybe they just haven't had that education as far as that introductory financial literacy, and that know-how with kind of everyday money management.
Okay, so that is something that y'all do. Like, well, let me back up. So people that are not here local, the Family Center is a community nonprofit organization, and they provide different services there. So I'm sure in your community, wherever you're located, there's more than likely somebody or an agency similar that or that does some of these same types of services. But right here in Columbus, Georgia, this is where we are with the Family Center. So some of the things that you guys do, because I heard you say financial literacy. Like, what is that?
That is financial education, basically, but just and we get asked that a lot because it's just something that just now is really being taught in schools, but should have been years and years ago. When we grew up, there was no class on how to write checks, how to manage your daily budget, how to prioritize your bills at the end of each month, what credit is, things like that. So all of those things are what we call financial literacy. And so it's just really being literate about, managing your own finances, being educated on how to manage your household, your
Mhm.
finances, anything from savings to planning for the future. So
Yeah. And that is, I think, is incredible because, like, for me, fortunately, I had wonderful parents. And hey, Mama, and hey, Michelle, for thank y'all for coming on. But I had wonderful parents that, you know, they taught me these things because you're right. It wasn't necessarily like in school. They showed you how to add, subtract, and barely count money. But, my
Mhm.
parents were the ones that taught me like how to write check, how to fill out a check, how to balance checkbooks and things like that, and like why that kind of stuff was important in savings and whatnot. So these are things that you guys are doing, like your organization goes into schools and actually teaches this, or just like in the community.
Both. Um, and like you, I mean, I had, I was fortunate enough that, my father took me aside as a teenager and was like, you were going to learn how to write checks. You were going to learn how to balance your checkbooks, how to do your own taxes, all of those things. So,
Mhm.
but, and it was something that I didn't know until stepping into this position and really learning what financial counseling was, and getting those certifications that, so, I mean, it just opened my eyes because so many people don't get that basic knowledge at home. And so, we get that a lot as we go out in the community, in the schools. We work with after school programs as well, other community agencies, homeless population, schools from elementary school up through high school. So, all different walks of life there. But one of the things that we hear over and over again is, oh my God, when we start learning this, it seems so basic, but you don't know what you don't know. So, if you're not in an environment where you're exposed to those things, and I mean, just with really young elementary kids, we sit there and we go over, this is what a nickel is, this is what a dime is, this is what a savings account is. I mean, just explaining some basic knowledge of what finances are, and it just breaks it down. It makes it less intimidating. It's not so overwhelming. It's not this big scary thing,
Mhm.
so it's just being aware and having that that mindfulness of it just makes you feel empowered and you start to feel like, okay, this is something that I'm in control of and I can do this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love that because it makes a more well-rounded person. And so hopefully you have like a not ignorant and you have a mature money management process as you get to be an adult. Because, nowadays, especially like I was literally thinking about this. Like, I hardly ever have cash, whereas before you had to have cash pretty much,
Yeah.
and some of these kids, I don't even know what they're called, like generation, whatever they are. But
I think it's Z now, and that's
yeah,
what my
that's what
son said. So
I was thinking, like Z, but I wasn't sure.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure if it like doubled up or something. But when you think about these kids, like literally, they don't know like the whole process of like money. It's
Mhm.
just your Cash App and Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, and that's all the stuff I know. There's even more things that kids are using, but it's just like I literally had to go to a bank. I had to go to a cashier's place and cash checks,
Mhm.
and now you can just like scan it, get scammed even. But it's just like touching and feeling money it's not real. It's just like money's there in seconds. And it's like these kids
Right.
unfortunately think that that's how it really works, but it ain't.
They do, and it's I mean, it's just like you said, it's not tangible anymore, which actually opens that up to more scams and just a sense of, I mean, now I think more than ever, you swipe a card or you push a button and there goes $200.
Yeah,
And it just doesn't seem like it's so easy to spend money that you don't really think about, oh, well, do I really have that to spend? Or, because it's so impulsive these days and you
yeah.
can't, get cash and count out dollar bills and put your fingers on it the way that, you did or we did, growing up. So,
And that's another thing. I want to say hi to Miss Geraldine. But also, my mom just made a comment and she said a lot of them can't count money. And that is so true.
right. Yeah.
Like, because the other day, my husband, we went and he gave the person $40, like two 20s, and they literally
Hmm.
put in 20 and 20, not like 40. And I was like, what? Like, what are they doing? And I mean, because we
Yeah.
saw the receipt, and it was like 20 plus 20. And then like, please don't try to give them the little extra money that makes up the change, so that you can get a whole dollar back.
Yes, I've done that before. You hand them like your bill is 5.15, and you hand them 10.15, and they're like, what do I do
You
with
know, I
this?
do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's too, I mean, it's sad. I'm laughing, but it's really sad,
Well,
just
it
because.
is, and it all goes back to not really being taught that, whether school or at home. Um, and you don't, like I said, you don't know what you don't know. So if you're not taught those basic fundamentals, then
What do you
you
do?
just, when you're in that situation and you've never been exposed to that, it's like, oh well, what do I do now? What do I do with this?
Mhm. And it's getting even, I mean, I don't know anything about cryptocurrency for real, but this thing right here, like this, like you just put your phone up.
Yeah.
I'm like, what in the world? Like I mean, technology is amazing, yes, but I mean, I don't know. It's a little scary when I need to know how much money I got, kind of thing.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, and I'm a little old school with some of that, so I'm kind of wary of the. I mean, it is convenient, and I think that's what the attraction is for a lot of
yeah.
people is, well, I can just hold my phone up and do this or swipe this
Mm,
and push a button, but then you're also making yourself more vulnerable too. So where
yes.
there's convenient technology, there's also new scams and new ways to hack things, and so
Mhm. And I have several clients that are like in cyber, like they learn to
Mhm.
hack, so
Yeah.
I mean legally, but Michelle just made a comment. She said that, it is sad and we have to tell them what's the amount to give us back. And I know that's like all the time
Hmm.
people have to do that. It's like, okay, you're just supposed to give me $1.50 back, because they don't get it. But
Yep.
but
Yeah.
I want
Yeah,
to
and you have to tell them,
segue.
no. I gave you the change.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because and they or like they give you the the wrong amount and want to argue with you and act like they knew or something. It's like, no, you gave me a 10.
Mhm.
No, I gave you a 20. Like but I want to segue into something because we are, talking a little bit about these kids. We're kind of ragging on them. But with this, we were kind of mentioning it like when you don't have like good financial literacy, right? I
Mhm.
was looking at something today earlier because I knew what we were going to be talking about. So I did what I kind of do sometimes and I look up statistics, even though I'm gonna put it out there again, like I always do. I don't really like statistics because it's not truly accurate and factual. But
Yeah, you can kind of skew them.
yeah,
However,
but this particular, it wasn't like a whole research study. It was just a survey that I found that I want to say it came from um, Bankrate and Psych Central, and they did it earlier this year. It was kind of like just a survey thing,
hmm
and they did a money health report. It says money and mental health report, but this was April of this year. Did you say something?
I didn't know.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm hearing stuff, but
It might have been one of my kids or something.
no, my husband, I can hear him too. So it's like,
Okay.
but anyway, it says that this report in April of 22 found that a significant portion of Americans experience financial worries. Of the respondents surveyed, 42% cited money concerns as having a negative impact on their mental health. So when you talk about you guys combining, your department into two, that makes so much sense, right? Because
Mhm.
obviously to me, mental health is at the epitome of everything. So, it all kind of goes hand in hand. So with this survey, it says striking statistics, including that women are more likely to be negatively affected than men.
Mhm.
It said there was 46% of them saying that they're more likely to be negatively affected, and 38% of the men said it. Then it says millennials suffer the most. It said that 48% of millennials, and that's the age, oh, it's telling us what they are, age 26 to 41. If that's you, you're a millennial and you suffer the most. And it says that they are psychologically impacted by financial concerns, which then followed by Generation X, which is me, 42 to
Yeah, me too.
57. And that there's 46% of us that fit in that say it. So we're like close to them. And then
Mhm.
Generation Z, which is the 18 to 25-year-olds, it says that there's only 40% say that it impacts their mental health negatively. Then the next
They're
thing
still
that is
young.
right, yeah, they don't know yet.
They're still young.
They ain't paying no bills. Um,
Mhm.
it says higher earners experience less emotional distress than low earners, which kind of makes sense, I think.
Mhm.
It says only 30% of people with annual incomes of at least $100,000 cited money as a negative factor in their mental health. And that's compared to 48% of those with household incomes of less than 50,000. And I think like even for the population of people that you work with at the family center and just in general in our area, that's probably like a mean income level, is it? Or am I wrong?
Pretty close. Yeah, right around there.
Yeah, right around like 50, maybe a combined household of 100,000 on a good day. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you? Like if you made money, well, we'll talk about that too. Um, it says worrying about money is a frequent event. So among those who cited money as having a negative impact on their mental health, 28% said they worry about it daily. Daily. So it says these daily worriers were most often male at 32% compared to 24% of females with high school degrees or less. and then 32% compared to 25% of those with some college or more. And they were young in younger age groups. So 34% of Gen Z and 36% of millennials compared to 27% of Generation X and 17% of baby boomers. So baby boomers aren't really worried about it. Um, I guess we are a little more worried about it, and the millennials, obviously. So it's,
Yeah,
yeah, but I'm
we've
saying like
seen.
daily. That's a lot to, I'm just thinking about daily. That means
No,
every
I
single
believe it. I
day. Yeah.
believe it. I have, in fact, we do individual counseling, we do couples, and and families, and I mean, just looking at some of my clients, I have couples that come in, not every single one, but the significant majority of couples that I've worked with, it's it's finances, but it's caused a whole bunch of other issues in their marriage.
Mhm.
Just relationship issues. I mean, finances is really one of the biggest factors leading up to a lot of divorces, and a lot of, I mean, just stressing the need for counseling, couples counseling, but it all boils down to disagreeing about, the basics of how do we handle the family finances.
Mhm.
So we see a lot of that, and with individuals as well. One of a one thing that we do a lot of community outreach, with our psychoeducation groups, and we go out and we work with community partners, and we have groups on site as well, and we talk about mental health topics, what you would expect from a mental health counseling agency, coping with anxiety, divorce, trauma, grief, things like that. Every agency that, since we've combined services with financial counseling, every agency that we already offer those services to, when they found out, oh, now we can do financial education, we alternate. So, we go to, for example, Hope Harbor, the women's shelter there, the domestic violence shelter. We do the women's empowerment groups and the groups there with the women, and we do financial groups with them
Mhm.
as well. And so, like you were saying, with the statistics on how many more women are impacted, and have that negative effect from the financial stressors. A lot of these women, especially in a domestic violence situation,
Mhm.
maybe some of the abuse that they've suffered, psychological, verbal, physical, um, financial, that's actually a form of abuse as well. They weren't allowed to deal with the finances, or maybe they weren't allowed access to their own money, and so it's like that's a form of control as well. So that's something that we found working with that specific population,
Yeah.
was how that played a part in just the trauma that they were already suffering.
I know before I even got into therapy, I didn't realize that financial abuse was an actual thing until I
Mhm.
did, obviously get into therapy. And I was just so taken aback by how many women, especially women, I mean, men suffer at it, from it too,
Definitely.
um, but just like me working with the domestic violence population was just like crazy. But
Mhm.
I remember when I was first in the army, I was a little private, and well, let me not say that. I was a whole private first class girl. I
You
had I
are.
was an E3. um, but I remember one of our my fellow soldiers. I think he was really controlling or whatever, and we had this made up like scenario that they act like people are getting deployed, and you got to go through this whole process to this fake
Mhm.
place, right? But you're really just like going like to Louisiana. So anyway, they do it just like it's a real thing. And I remember, and I may have said this on here before, but I remember I worked in like our office area. It was like my side duty that I had to do. And his wife came because she thought it was a real place that he was going to. So she was kind of worried about him. And she came to ask him questions. And, I'm just like, yeah, what do you need? She said that this man told her not to drive but like he gave her a certain amount of mileage to drive every day, and and like a certain amount of money to spend. And so they had like three kids, you know, and he was just like me, like an E4, you know, he wasn't, and she didn't work. So he told her like, when I come back, I'll know if you went over your mileage, and I'll know that you spent too much money and all this stuff. And she was just like, I don't know what to do. And I was just thinking, you know, me being my independent self, I'm like, girl, he make this much money and this, you know, and I was all in, probably violating all kind of stuff, telling her this information. But it was just like, that's, you know, I was just thinking like, how do you not know how much money your husband makes, you know? But then, because my parents were very communicable people, you know,
Mhm.
they talked about stuff, they talked to us, you know, they didn't necessarily say like, you know, we got this much money, but I knew like, yeah, we're not going to get that, or this, you know, like they gave us boundaries, you know.
Yeah.
So it
And
was,
it's funny, you mentioned that. I think that was so. My father was military, and he was a drill sergeant, and he saw some of these same things, in his years, commanding his unit. And so that was one of the things that I remember him telling me, as a teenager was, you are going to be independent. You are going to know how to take care of your finances and how to do this all yourself. So I think, me being his daughter, and only child at that. So, it was very important to him that,
yeah,
I know all these things, that I'm not, depending on a man to take care of me and not know what's going on, with my own finances.
yeah. And I mean, like I said, I think it happens both ways. Not I think, but I know it happens both ways because, you know, there
Oh,
could be a
definitely.
woman that makes the, you know, she's the breadwinner, and maybe the guy
Hmm.
just, he works, but he just doesn't make as much. And, you know, she may be really controlling about the finances and not allowing him to do, or, you know, do things. And I've seen that
Hmm.
as
Well, that's probably more relevant now,
well.
with more women in the workforce and more women in those breadwinner positions. So absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of all this stress, like, you know, I'm thinking about the daily, you know, I'm going back to that daily, like how you worry about your finances daily. But um just thinking about that, that's like the bad stress, right? So when you have, you know, there's good stress, bad stress.
Right.
So from a mental health perspective, I'm thinking if you worry about something, that's, you know, obviously anxiety provoking. And so you worry about that causing this distress. And that's how like heart attack, you know, your blood pressure raises. It can cause
Oh,
all
very much.
kinds of physical, you know, physical problems, not just like mental health problems. So it's like, you know, it, I think it is important for people to get some kind of financial literacy education and get themselves in a better space, because, you know, if it affects you that badly, you know, that you start to decline physically and mentally, like that's, you know, that's a little scary.
Well, it's definitely, and it's what stress does to our bodies, but also, what are the biggest stressors to a person? Anything that threatens your basic needs. So if you look at, finances being, one of those big stressors is, your basic needs. You want to make sure that you have a roof over your head. You want to make sure you're able to feed yourself and your family. You want to make sure you're able to, just have some of those basic necessities. And if you don't have the money to have those things, or you're not sure where your next meal's coming from, or you're not sure, hey, can I keep the light on this month? Those are stressors that impact our ability to have those basic needs, kind of those fundamentals. And so then, that's what causes that cycle of stress. And then so it's this vicious cycle, because having that stress on us, affects us physically as well as mentally. And then maybe it keeps us from doing the things that we need to do to get out of that situation, because we're sick from all the stress. And
Right.
so it just kind of goes back in that circle.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to this survey because it said another prevalent and pressing concern was people not having let me find it. I'm going to say it the way they said it. having money tucked away for the unexpected is a strong
Mhm.
emotional safety net. So it says, consequently, it's not much of a surprise that the survey also found that insufficient emergency savings emerge as a top factor. And it had 57% of those who worry about the money citing it as a specific issue that has a negative impact on their mental health. It's also especially true among Generation X, which was 60%, millennials 59, and women at 60%. So just another big thing is not having enough money, and I can attest to that. Like,
Mhm.
well, not having enough money, but just when emergencies come up, because if you don't have
Yeah, the
like,
rainy day fund.
yeah, right, because our air conditioning went out, but thankfully, you know, we not this year, but a couple years ago, but thankfully, we had the money and we're able to replace a whole air conditioning unit and, just different things like that. But like, I guess that could really stress you out, of what to do
Very
now.
much so, and I think yeah, and I think that that all came to the forefront here recently as we saw with COVID and the pandemic and then all the
Yeah.
inflation and everything that's been going on the past couple years, it just kind of pushed all those things to the surface where maybe before, you could just kind of brush them under the rug and
Hmm.
and not really think about it, but it having these things here that we've dealt with as a society over the past couple years has made us have to
Right.
confront those things. And so, it became something that didn't just happen to other people, but now suddenly it's something that you're
Mhm.
confronted with that, oh, well, this is a very real possibility. Now I'm out of a job, or now my loved one is sick, or I'm sick, or, these things that happen and have happened to more people and, had this impact like we haven't seen before in our lifetime. So
Right.
I think that that's just kind of made what was just kind of a fear to something that is a very real possibility for a lot of people. And so it's just made that little nagging stress, a big stress now.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that was, yeah, just going through the pandemic probably opened up a lot of people's eyes about things, just because like being laid
Mhm.
off or not able to work, or if you were working hourly, not having the hours,
Yes.
to make that income, and on top of the inflation. There's
Mm.
something that I was just thinking about too, is like the cost of living. It's crazy because,
It is.
I mean, I haven't really had to work an hourly job like that in a minute, but like just thinking about what the hourly living wage, like, well, living wage is different from hourly wage, but I think it was still just like 7.25, right? Or has it changed, or do you know? Like it's like 7.25 or
Federally, no, it's still
yeah,
7.25 from what I understand. I know that there have been some states that have, done
yeah.
$9, $10, 15, depending on the state. But no, federally, it is still 7.25 as far as I know.
And I just think about that. Like, you making 7.25. How are you supposed to survive? And like,
In most places, you can't really.
you can't. So just to add
Mhm.
to your stress, um, I
Mhm.
did see something else from a different site. I can't remember what it was, but it was also talking about, because we're talking about people having debt or being without, right? Having the lack
Right.
portion of it. But it was also talking about how people that have the money, how they can be just as depressed, like how it affects their mental health. Um,
Mhm.
what do you think? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
As far as people having money, and
Yeah.
I can see that because your lifestyle, you get accustomed to a certain lifestyle. If you have more money, then you have more bills. And so there's that very real stress, especially if you weren't born into that kind of money and, maybe you came into it along the way and, suddenly you need a bigger car, you need a bigger house, and you have,
Mhm.
these bills come up. Maybe family, there's that expectation or that pressure to provide for the family or to provide for extended family. And So I can definitely see, that being a stressor because with more money comes more expectations. And so,
Yeah.
there's more expectations is more pressure. So if you lose that, there's that fear, I think, hanging over your head, if you're in that situation of all these people are expecting this of me, what if something happens and I can't do that anymore? Who's still going to
Right.
be there?
Right.
So I can see that very easily. And that
I
in
think.
itself is its own form of stress because,
Mm-hmm.
do these people love and respect me, or is it because, I can buy
Yeah,
them things or I can pay their way for stuff?
because you're the ATM. Yeah.
Right.
I know my husband, he used to watch this show. I mean, maybe it's just the season's gone off, but it was a really interesting. It was about like people like trying to make it to the draft. It happened to be about basketball. But
Mm,
one of the things that I really liked about the show, because it was more of one of those like reality, it wasn't like a reality show, but it was more like documentary type
mhm,
reality. But the one of the people that was like a manager or agent, whatever he did, he talked about having that financial literacy, showing them, because you got to think today I'm just Juana, but tomorrow when I make it to the NBA or whatever, I'm going to be Juana, the superstar number 25, and
mhm.
I'm going to have like $1 million contract. And I'm used to making 725, like, so he talked about just having that. They had classes to teach them and help them so that they wouldn't be that one kid that goes and it's like, I'm gonna ball out and I'm gonna buy this um Lamborghini. I don't even know what kind of cars are out there, but the things that like with the side doors that fly up or whatever,
Oh,
and
yeah.
buy Rolexes and all these chains and all this just like expensive stuff. They were, I love that he was giving them like you said, the financial literacy classes, because sometimes I think we put so much emphasis on things,
Mhm.
and I know you can't take it with you to the grave, but you still need to have some kind of sense about money. Otherwise, you're gonna stress.
Definitely. And it's just, it gives you, I mean, they say knowledge is power. And I agree, in any subject really, but, financially, you're empowering yourself. The more that you know, the more that you have that peace of mind. And so that definitely puts you at ease, if you feel like that's an area of your life that you have some control over, or that, it's not this big overwhelming thing. You're able to understand these little pieces as you go through and you become literate financially and you understand, the importance of savings and, how credit works and how to manage, daily expenses. So it just, for your own sake, mentally it brings you peace and it gives you clarity and it makes you feel like, hey, I'm on top of this and I've got this organized. And so this is, we have planners. And I don't know if you're like me, like I live by my planner because if I don't write it down, it's not getting done. So
Right.
same thing with with your finances. So it's just one more piece that you can kind of have planned out, and the more that you look at it, the more you can adjust your budget, the more that it becomes something that's helpful to you. So you can actually turn knowledge of your household finances into an organizational tool that helps keep you on track and just makes your life so much easier. And I'm a big fan of keeping it simple. So whatever helps me keep things simple and smooth is a plus.
I love that. Yeah. And I know like all of my banks, they have like a tool on there that helps you to kind of like digitally balance or see like where
Mhm.
your money's going, not balance
Yes.
it, but just see where your money's going, how you're spending. So
And
I like
that's
that kind of stuff.
yeah, and that's one thing, I tell my clients that I'm a big fan of there is no like one right way to do stuff as far as how you organize your finances or what you prioritize, because you want to ultimately your goal is to do what works for you. I mean, not everybody is going to be the same as far as how they do things and their preference. So there are free apps that you can download. There's digital tools, like you were saying, that the different banks or different sites offer. The websites that you mentioned, like Psych Central and Bankrate. Well, Psych Central is more mental health, but Bankrate is a great website with a bunch of tools and resources. NerdWallet is another one. I'm trying to think. My mind went blank. There are several other ones as well. But Bankrate and NerdWallet are probably the two that I use most often. There's
Okay.
Clever Girl Finance is a great one for specifically geared towards women, and they have a lot of empowerment stuff there. There's budget sheets that you can print out, savings trackers. So there's apps, there's a simple Excel spreadsheet. Ultimately, you want to use whatever method that you're going to stick with, and being honest with yourself and saying, well, I would like to do it this way, but I know that realistically I'm not going to. However, this way over here works great. And so you want to do whatever works best for you, and you want to customize it so that it's helpful to you. Otherwise, you're not going to be motivated to stick with it, and then it's not going to do you any good. So,
Yeah. And I know real quick, the last thing that I want to share about this survey, because it's actually kind of interesting. And then I want to jump into
Mhm.
some holiday tips before we head out. Um, some other events that it said that negatively impacted like their money, that sparked negative feelings, was looking at your bank account, paying a bill, making a purchase, having to talk about money, just talking about it. And they said that was like 32% people said just talking about it created negative feelings.
Yeah,
Getting
see
paid,
that.
yeah, yeah. Getting paid, and then looking at their investment accounts. And the last one was looking at social media. So I was just, I mean, these are kind of like, whoa, yeah. I mean, they're not shocking to me, but they are at the same time, just because like when I start seeing things written, it's like, oh wow, yeah. Like,
Mhm.
and it makes me think and reflect on myself, because it's like, especially if you're living like a paycheck to paycheck, you're waiting for that check to come or something like that. And that can cause stress because, oh, it's not, it's delayed, or it wasn't as much as you thought it was going to be,
Oh
all
yeah,
that stuff. Yeah.
yeah. Especially if you're hourly, and so your pay fluctuates, and
Hmm.
not. I mean, just depending on the situation, you may think you're getting this much, and then forget, oh well, I didn't get quite as many hours, or I didn't get the overtime I was expecting, and
Right.
then you look at the check, and it's that hard reality of,
Mhm.
oh well, I thought I had this amount to stretch for the next paycheck, but really it's this amount. So
Yeah.
that can definitely cause stress, because you always kind of idealize things in your head, and then the reality, if it doesn't meet that, then
Hmm.
it's very discouraging.
Right. Because I went from, like salary
Mhm.
to like private practice. And, now I'm like, it's just like, I mean, I get like my other check from like the VA, but it's
Mhm.
still just like, I'll see something and it's like, dang, that cost me 2 sessions. You know what I mean? Like, I just think about things from a different perspective now, because,
Mhm.
I know how much I make for a session versus, so it's like my hourly pay. So it makes my mind work differently than um what did you say, Michelle? Deciding what or who doesn't get paid. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
when you have those short checks, and sometimes you have to prioritize.
It's like
Um,
light bill or the
mhm.
cable bill. Yeah.
So just, and I see where she typed that comment there. So I do want to mention, because this is something that I think a lot of people don't think about until they're kind of faced to deal with that situation. But I would very much recommend, when you're not in that situation, you're more clear headed, and you're sitting there trying to plan out your budget for the next month. Have an emergency budget that you create for those occasions where, maybe your check is shorter than you thought it was going to be, or you had unexpected expenses come up. If you create an emergency budget in that moment of calm, then you can go back and you can refer to that when, because crisis mode, nobody's thinking clearly. So when you're actually in the situation and you're panicking and you're like, oh my god, my check is $200 less than it should have been, what do I pay?
Mhm.
um, because I've seen people make decisions that they normally wouldn't make. But again, when you're in crisis mode and you've got that collector calling saying, where's your Wells Fargo payment? And you pay that and then you forget, well, rent is due next month, next week. And so making a plan and referring back to it so that you have something clearly written out, and then you don't, you necessarily go into that panic mode and you go, oh, okay, I've got a plan. So you always want to, you can fix your credit later. You always want to worry about, keeping that roof over your head, making
Mm-hmm.
sure your family's fed, making sure you've got transportation to get from point A to point B. Those are the things you want to prioritize if you're having to pick and choose between who gets paid and who doesn't.
Yeah, I like that. Especially having a clear head, and if you need some coping skills to help you get,
Right, right.
that's where mental health part comes in. Get you some coping skills so that you can
Yes.
calm down and get out of the crisis brain and think rationally. So since you were talking about that, like just real quick before we go, I want
Mhm.
to kind of, that was a good segue into that of like crisis planning for holidays because I know the holidays are coming up.
They can
And
be a crisis for some people too. So,
right, because you want to live vicariously through your children and get them all this stuff that you never had, and or your grandchildren or your niece or nephew or something,
mhm.
and you're out here spending all this money on stuff that they don't even play with. So,
Yep.
um, no shade, no shade, but um, I had a couple questions from, I was going to say audience, but they're not. They're just from my family. But if you have a question, please go ahead and type it in the chat while I'm asking these. But one of the questions my daughter specifically asked, she was saying, can you ask about Black Friday? Like, is it really, is it worth, is there savings? She was just like, ask about Black Friday in general. But, so is there savings really there? Or is it worth, buying stuff on Black Friday? Or is it just like a marketing scheme?
Mostly it is a marketing scheme. I mean, there are occasions where, you might find a TV at just an incredible deal, but if you're really in the market for a TV, then yes, that would be a good purchase or a good time to buy that. If it's, I'm just going to go get that TV because it's on sale, but I don't really need a TV, then no. So about 90% of Black Friday is marketing. And if you notice, I mean, if you really pay attention to the sales and the prices of things leading up to Black Friday, they actually, and I'm not saying every place does this, but I know that there's a trend where prices will slowly gradually go up before the holiday season so that, oh, we're going to slash prices and we're going to have the Black Friday sale. And when you really sit there and you look at what this item costs on the Black Friday sale versus what it was in August, it's really not that different.
Mm-hmm.
But it's different from what it was a week ago. So you think you're getting this big deal or this, big savings on something that, is like I said, largely a marketing scheme to get you to go,
Yeah.
partake in the Black Friday festivities.
Well, personally, I don't like Black Friday because I ain't trying to stand in line. I don't like all them people
Right.
and all them kids.
The
Like,
same.
it's a lot.
I do my best to avoid any stores on that weekend.
Right.
But I
Demont,
say it's a good deal if only if it's something that you were genuinely going to buy anyway.
okay. And Demont said a TV is best to buy right after the Super Bowl. So FYI.
And
um,
that's probably a good idea.
and then yeah, right. Because then it's everybody's trying to buy the biggest TV for Super Bowl, I guess. And so
Mhm. And
it's
then you're
like,
coming out of that holiday season too,
um,
so,
yeah. So
a TV is gonna be a lot cheaper in February than it is in November.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, let's see. Uh, there's a question that Damon actually asked me. He said, will you have any tips for actually saving for the holiday? Like, so that you can, I guess, so that you don't go broke because it's like the week before Christmas and you got to buy a whole
Mhm.
bunch of stuff and you still got the same one paycheck that's
Yep.
$200 short. So, is there anything that you would suggest to help save, so that when, or plan for this?
Definitely. So, I mean, the best thing I can advise is start saving earlier in the year. I know a lot of banks and credit unions offer things like Christmas clubs or,
Michelle?
maybe open your own little separate account where, especially if it's interest bearing, like I know with some of the Christmas clubs, they do offer a little bit of an incentive as far as interest rates if you open that account. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount, but the earlier in the year that you start and you say, well, it doesn't even have to be percentage wise, maybe it's $20 a week, or $50 a pay period or something like that, and just start, whether it's a Christmas club or just another savings account or money market account, but start putting back a little bit per pay period. And that way, by the time holidays roll around, and I say this not just holidays, but birthdays,
Right.
periodic expenses, anything that comes up throughout the year that's not like a regular monthly expense. But the
Mhm.
more that you save for it in advance and kind of put a little bit towards it and let it build up, then you don't miss. You're not going to miss a little bit here and there, $20 a week, or like I said, 50, 75 a pay period. You're not really going to miss that as much as you're going to miss several $100s coming out at one time, right before the holidays.
Yeah. Or
So,
taking out a loan.
right, right. Which is something you don't want to do. You don't want to run up a bunch of credit
Yeah.
for the holidays, because again, it's really easy to get caught up in that habit of doing the Apple Pay or scanning that card, and then January you're stuck with a whole bunch of bills and interest and debt. And so sometimes it takes people the rest of the year, to pay off this debt that they've run up just for the purposes of Christmas or any holiday.
Nuh-uh, because guess what? I'm gonna get my taxes right after that. And then I'm just kidding. I'm
Well, but think of what else you could do with that taxes. You could go on
right.
vacation, or buy something else. Um, So
Yeah.
yeah, even if you get to the holidays and maybe you've got 5 or 600 put back, and really you were hoping to have about 1,000, well, that's that much less that
Mhm.
you've got to come up with, because you've got this cushion. So if you do use a little bit of credit, to get through the holiday season, then you're not totally dependent on the credit, or you're not putting yourself in a position where you've got to come up with all this money at once and then short yourself in other areas.
Yeah. And that's a, good way for this next question. Is he asked about boundaries, like what, like boundaries around like the money for the holidays. So, my first thought when he was talking to me was like boundaries for like your spouse or your kids or something. But he was just saying like, you know, like, is it important to have the boundaries? Is,
Mhm.
I'm thinking that's how he was saying it. But, from a mental health perspective, I love boundaries. It's
Yeah,
always
they're
important.
important.
But, so what's something that somebody could do as far as money to set a boundary for money?
Um, couple of different things. So one thing that might work for some people is, and this, I mean, this works for me personally, and I do it, is, you know, we all hear retail therapy, treat yourself, get yourself something nice, which is fine in moderation. But sometimes, I mean, I know I've personally stood in the store before and looked at, do I really need another throw pillow? It's
Mhm.
really pretty. Um, but if it's something that I know I don't need, but it's just a want, and it's not, not anything necessary, sit on it for 24 hours, 48 hours. Most cases, 9 times out of 10, if it's not something you really need, you get home and you don't ever think about that thing again. You
Right.
know, if it's something, I mean, just depending on what it is, if it's something that you just feel like, okay, well, my mind keeps going back to it, maybe I go back and I get that item. But in most cases, that won't be the case. And so that's something that you can do to just kind of, like, a little mental tool that you can use to just say, well, hey, let me think on it. Let me just put it away for 48 hours and then come back to it and see, do I still feel that strongly about it? Is this something I need to go back and get? So that's one way. Or, something else would just be, I mean, just really being disciplined, but writing it down. If you have, um, maybe you have a Starbucks habit, or, you go out and, maybe you eat out a little bit too much during the week, or just something like that. I mean, just making that conscious choice of taking that money that you would normally spend on that, sticking it in an envelope or a jar, give it to a
Mhm.
loved one, give it to your spouse and say, here, put this up, put this in the drawer, keep it where I can't see it. That way, over time, you go back and you revisit it and you have $80 put back and you don't really miss it. So those are just a couple different things that you can do to, kind of keep yourself on track and, working towards the goals that you have for that money.
Yeah, I like that. Something that I did, that I used to do that I need to start back doing is like I would give my one account that I have is like a Wells Fargo account, and it's like just my fun account kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just keep it because I needed a local account. But they I they what I would do is like give myself an allowance. So instead of using my main account, like that was like our joint account where all our bills are getting paid, I would just give myself like a $200 month, allowance in that account.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like if I went out to eat or if I did something that wasn't in our budget, that was just for me. If I wanted to go get my nails done or something, it was just that was the $200. And when that was gone, if I didn't have like I wanted to go to, I don't know, Bonefish Grill. Well, I ain't got Bonefish Grill money, so I'm gonna have to go hit up Burger King. You know what I mean?
Right, right. And
And
that's another good method that I recommend too is, taking out that set amount of cash and that's what you've got to spend, this week or this pay period or however you want to do that. And then when that's gone, it's gone. And, it keeps you from relying on credit and, keeps you more accountable for the purchases if you know ahead of time like this is it, and then when I'm done with this there isn't any more.
yeah. Well, I do appreciate you. Does anybody out there have a question? I didn't see any pop up, but if you do have questions, Rosemary, how can people get in touch with you or the Family Center?
So the probably the best way to reach me honestly is email. So I'm going to, can I put a comment in the, how
I
do I
think so.
comment on here?
Does it? I think you can. It's like under all the comments.
Yeah,
If not, I can.
okay. I don't see where it, but my email if you,
There's an Art Spangler.
yes, at thefamilyctr.org. Yeah, for some reason it's not letting me type it.
It's okay.
But
And
email, if I'm working from home, I've always got, access to my work email. Or you can call. You have our number there, the 706-327-3238
I'm gonna post.
or 39, either one.
I'm gonna post it, and then I'll also put it in the chat. So yeah, so you could call. So one number is for the main Family Center number, and then the others like directly to like family counseling. I mean, financial counseling.
It is. So back when we had the separate departments, we had the two different lines, but they're both, you'll get Jackie or Kawana and they've got my schedule. So
Okay. And then that's like really would that be like they could come over there to get any other kind of like not just this kind of stuff we were talking about, but more
mhm.
things like about housing or if you have a what do you call it? Like an organization or you would like a workshop or a financial class or something like that, they could come there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. So, at the family center, we do all the family service things. We do mental health counseling, we do the education groups, the outreach, financially. I do individual sessions as well as workshops on any of the financial topics. We can structure them on site there. We can go out to different community agencies. And then also we have Big Brothers Big Sisters as part of the family center as well. So they do youth-based mentoring, community mentoring, and school based. So
So it's a whole little mentoring and
servicing
counseling
whole
the
family.
service. Yeah, whole
Yep.
family. I love it. Hence the Family Center. Um,
Mm-hmm.
well, Rosemary, I appreciate you. I want to keep people on. It's like right at 9 o'clock. I know you got your babies, and people probably got to eat or wash up or whatever. But
Yeah.
I have really enjoyed this. It was very informational, and I appreciate you so much for coming on. And anytime you want to come back, you got some you know, financial advice, information,
Sure.
whatever you got, you're more than welcome to always come back. Do you
I'd be
have any,
happy to.
you got any final words you want to say to the peoples?
thank you all for having me. And, just, I would be happy to come back on and talk about, if there's any interest in a specific topic, whether it's housing or credit or, maybe come tax season, we talk about
Mm.
taxes. So, um, yeah, I'd love to. Thank you for having me. And
Oh,
I've enjoyed it.
I just thought about Michelle in my head. She's like, I like when you ask people what's something they do intentionally every day, and I always forget. So, what is something that you do to be intentional every day? Like something that you do personally. It could be about anything.
Um, I don't know. Well, I try to practice gratitude. And, I know that's something that I think with what we do, just in the counseling field, I mean, whether it's financial counseling, mental health, both, it's, it can be a challenging field. And so, just to, that is one thing that I do every day is just, you know, try to come from a place of gratitude. And just, I'm very, very appreciative and grateful for, the opportunities that we have, and, for my family. And so that is one thing that I try to be real mindful of every day.
I love that because it is so important
It
to,
is.
be thankful for what you do have because, some like I'm thankful I have a job. Somebody
Mhm.
might not have one and need one or something. I'm thankful I have a house, a family, or all these different things that we take maybe for granted or that seems to annoy us. So I love that you take time to reflect on that daily. So
Yeah, for me, it helps keep things in perspective. And, when you day to day frustrations, you get a little grumpy with, situations maybe being stressful or not going the way you want. And so it just helps kind of remind me, like, oh, well, I am really blessed in these ways. And I'm very thankful for,
mhm.
the ability to come home and have my family and have the things that we have. So
Yeah. Well, I love it. And I am grateful and thankful for you. And as always, you guys, we're going to wrap up. I am here. It is now, and I am alive. I will see you all next Tuesday. All right. Be safe. And oh, yeah, I hope, wait, my thing's all backwards. I voted. I did. I hope you did too.
yep.
So, all right. Good night.
Good night.